Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Now tap that screen. Oh, gang gremlins on the
Grumps
scene.
says welcome one and all.
Gaga Grumps says hi Sophia.
To the game grotto. Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcoming
Gaga
guys.
Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and
now
prepare to
tap
play.
that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Thanks for the follow.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Gang gremlins come and let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers.
Gaga
glow.
Grumps says thanks for following Rachel.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Some VXG says I have to go.
Gaga Grumps says Blossom in the house thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says thanks for coming Blossom lol. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grumps says at BL0SM.VXZ there was a blitz visit.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. I.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says 19J in the house. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon, gremlin renowned, like-a-thon.
Gaga Grumps says wants to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Thanks for the follow.
Lights the fire.
Thanks for the follow. Thanks for the follow.
We would be honored if you would join
Gaga
us.
Grumps says your word starting with I please in betweeners. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart 19J1.
Grump says at DJ Higher.
Gaga Grumps says in between us, do you have a word for us? 19JWS97 says issue at in betweener. Gaga Grumps says if your word is being filtered, try I'd like word. In betweeners fan 101 says Ibiza. Gaga Grumps says I'm good TDJ. Gaga Grumps says I don't think Ibiza will be valid, but I will give it a spin.
Grump says Ibiza won't work.
Gaga Grumps says nope, not valid.
19 Jews 97 says issue.
In betweeners fan 101 says Isles.
Gaga Grumps says Isles you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow S live at number 5. Remember no plurals in Wordle.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart angline. Gaga Grumps says nearly Kawi.
EUNN01 says mains.
Gaga Grumps says no plurals in Wordle UNO. Gaga Grumps says how about bonus?
Kawi says bonus is good.
Gaga Grumps says I shall give it a spin. Gaga Grumps says and it was good.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy, as in her face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga.
Thanks for the follow.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet, anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga
We
Grumps
would
says
be
let's play
honored
Wordle.
if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
EUANN01 says audio.
Gaga Grumps says Lion Lotus in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking, there is a pinned post on my page explaining.
Lion Lotus says Lotus.
Lion Lotus, it's my pleasure, Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. F.
EUANN01 says fires.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Grumps says it UNO. One no plurals.
Lion Lotus says flute.
To the top, like a thorn. Tap and don't stop, like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned, like a thorn. Fingers on
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
hearts be flying like a thorn. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says at coconut we start with F.
UANO1 says Valley.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with F, please, car guy. Gaga Grumps says are you with this car guy? Gaga Grumps says if your word is being filtered, try I'd like word.
Grumps says it, AZ Upsilon NRR no F on radio, and it's car guy's turn.
Gaga Grumps says flower you got.
Grumps says it, car guy from your word starting with F. Grumps says NVM.
Gaga Grumps says Greeno lives at num J3 Wordle Street.
Grumps says it, car guy from you were a second too fast. Grumps says it, Yarf 06 higher.
Gaga Grumps says stood fits. Gaga Grumps says we have a second O and AD both homeless. Gaga Grumps says I like Doofy. Doozy is probably better.
Lion Lotus says Woozy.
Roblox Girl says Woody.
Gaga Grumps says we end in OODY.
Lion Lotus says NVM.
Grumps says it, Crystal morning.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says okay, slow down for options and potential trap filter.
Thanks for the follow.
Crystal says good morning.
Thanks for the follow.
Crystal says it, Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says 4 options 3 guesses, we need a filter word that contains at least 3 of those letters.
Grumps says way as filter.
Gaga Grumps says Crystal in the house.
Roblox Girl says Woody.
Gaga Grumps says way is a good one. Gaga Grumps says goody it is.
Grumps says goody then.
Good game.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons! Don't let him push yours!
Good game.
Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly!
all do for Gaga. Share the live chat the chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the GG's Crystal.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next bit.
We would be honored.
Gaga
if
Grumps
you would
says the
join
daily
us.
Wordle scammed me today. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart crystal.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says DV in the house thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Why? Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts be flying, like a thon. Gremlins defy.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Y, please.
Thanks
D.
for the follow. Thanks for the follow.
DVP says young.
Gaga Grumps says young you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow O in need of a home. Gaga Grumps says olive fits. Gaga Grumps says E moved into number 5 Wordle Street O till homeless. Gaga Grumps says I don't think croak is a word, please don't spam your wads. Crystal says at Lil_Gaffakid_Kobe really. Gaga Grumps says stroke is 6 letters. Gaga Grumps says no N for crone. Gaga Grumps says it can't be lover, stop saying it. Gaga Grumps says Stoke fits. Gaga Grumps says S moved into number 1 and O into 3. Gaga Grumps says swore is a good shout. Gaga Grumps says R lives at number 4.
DVP says sure.
Crystal says sure.
Gaga Grumps says sure it must be.
Gamer Furry 420 says chomp filler.
Gaga Grumps says oh yes spore 2. Gaga Grumps says and score.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says okay filter needed.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says we don't guess in this room we win. Gaga Grumps says cheap is a good filter. Gaga Grumps says score it is.
Crystal says score it is.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Will the fireworks fly?
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart game of fairy.
Chosen by fate, play a part, it's a live date.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says can you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Get it in 3, it's do or die.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next
A
grid.
pretty sky.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle changed the word today.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I record my daily in advance. I recorded today's last week and the word was blitz. It isn't the word today. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grumps says Q of course.
Crystal says C equals Cooper.
Gaga Grumps says Ha Crystal.
Grumps says it Crystal Sheldon.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, W.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts be flying, like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with W, please, Grumps.
Shout! It's Cooper!
Gaga Grumps says after this message for the wiggle butt.
It's Cooper! Wiggle butt, just a little mud with the wiggle
Grumps
butt.
says water.
Gremlin say what? He's a corgi, don't you know? His name is Cooper, watch him go. Wiggle butt, just a little mud with the wiggle butt. Gremlin say what? With the wiggle butt. Wiggle butt, just a little mud with the wiggle butt. Gremlin say what? With the wiggle butt. That cute and fluffy puffball tail, Cooper, we do, yeah. Wiggle butt, just a little mud with the wiggle butt. Gremlin say what? With the wiggle butt.
Crystal says W. Gaga love it.
Gaga Grumps says water you got.
Nope.
Grumps says at Mother Irving no plural in Wordle. Grumps says at ST4 RS Amahaya.
Gaga Grumps says Alive's at number 2 Wordle Street and R needs a home. DVP says Derry. Gaga Grumps says rapid fits.
Benjamin is in the house.
Crystal says I have to go to that lovely place of work. Have a great day.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says fireworks for Jay.
It's a performance night. Explode 'em on her face.
Level
She's in a
up.
happy place. Fireworks for Gaga.
Crystal says WJ.
Within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Milogamy says level 5.
Grumps says at Crystal have a good day.
Malogamy says here.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Summer says at Bradley, what's her problem?
Fireworks for Gaga.
Crystal says Grump's thumb.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says Miller in the
Good
house with
game.
the level up coming up next.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Grump says at Miller
Good
Gaming
game.
you level up.
Good game. Good game.
Milargaming says at Grumpsy at a level 5, D.
It's a
Gaga Grumps says a quick segue for this. Level up in the room for Miller.
Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, you'd spell out.
Grump says at Summer Higher.
Level up.
Green, green, look at that.
Grump says at Miller Gaming.
Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support
Summer says at Grumps, hey you okay?
level unlocked. Shout
Level up.
New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me thrive. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Grump says at Summer sure am. Thanks, yourselves.
Milargaming says I am not on for long but thought I would pop in. I am off to football tonight.
We would be honored.
Gaga
if you
Grumps
would
says
join
thanks
us.
for popping in.
Grump says why on earth am I suddenly smelling rum plums?
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Miller. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grump says at Miller Gaming play or watch.
Milargaming says at Gaga and Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Why again?
Milargaming says at Grumps, I am off to watch. I run social media for
Thanks for the
Hamworthy
follow.
United.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Grump says at Miller Gaming
Race
night.
to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on fire like
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
flying like a thorn. Gremlins define.
Milargaming says at Grumps I am going to be live streaming from the official TikTok at 7:40 p.m.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Y please Olu.
CJ to 3 for 9 following says scam.
Gaga Grumps says yours you got.
CJ to 3 for 9 following says my likes froze, this is a scam.
Malargaming says under.
Gaga Grumps says I don't have control over what TikTok counts, CJ.
Grumps says it's CJ squared cubed following behave.
Gaga Grumps says under fits.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says no change, 6 letters wiped from the game.
Grumps says at Milena Pink Heart no R.
Gaga Grumps says no plurals in Wordle.
Summer says rural.
Gaga Grumps says no E for puree. Gaga Grumps says no R in cubic.
Summer says rural.
Gaga Grumps says we don't do words for letters unless we need a filter. Gaga Grumps says rural is a great shout. Gaga Grumps says we start with Roo and we have a homeless A. Gaga Grumps says rumba works.
Good game.
Welcome, Gremlins.
Gaga Grumps says great guest step.
Welcome, Gremlins, to the game grotto. Welcoming guys, settle down. Grab
Gaga
your
Grumps says
heartbeat.
GG Gremlins.
Share us round.
Let's see
Now
those
tap that
W's in the
screen,
chat.
Tap it, tap it,
Good
tap
game.
that screen, yeah, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Game Gremlins on the scene. Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Game Gremlins, come and let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Game Gremlins on the scene. that screen.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily
Now
heart.
tap that screen. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart
Gang
while I set
gremlins
up the
on the
next group.
scene.
Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. S. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thumb, race to the top, like a thun. Tap and don't stop, like a thun. Who will be crowned like a thun?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thun. Hearts beat flying like a thun. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with S, please, Summer.
Summer says story.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Summer. Gaga Grumps says story you got.
Grumps says at White Band for 11 don't spam.
Gaga Grumps says Y lives at number 5 and T needs a home.
Grumps says Ethan hushes.
Summer says Ethan says slime.
Chesley FC says empty.
Gaga Grumps says Fenty is a brand I don't think is valid.
Grumps says at my dad dance ACC. That a brand is not gonna work.
Gaga Grumps says no after entry.
Summer says at Matted Dance Ek. No R.
Grump says at Madad Dance ACC. No R.
Gaga Grumps says empty fits. Gaga Grumps says T lives next door to Y.
Summer says bet it's a double T.
Grump says at football with Finley no O or E.
Summer says catty.
Gaga Grumps says Fitty will test the T theory.
Summer says at Amelia no R. Summer says catty.
Gaga Grumps says an obviously Justin Britt word lol.
Summer says at football with Finley there's Noah, stop spamming.
Gaga Grumps says okay catty it is. Gaga Grumps says TT theory confirmed.
Summer says bitty, is that a word? Maria says kitty.
Gaga Grumps says it might be. Already tried Fitty, it's not valid.
Summer says, oh, we gonna be in a trap.
We would be honored if you would join us.
A creative one says kitty.
Summer says sword fulfilling a W in the outway.
Grump says at Suli_edit07 Fitty has been tried. Stop spamming.
Gaga Grumps says 3 options 2 guesses. Filter word needed. Gaga Grumps says ditty it is.
A creative one says tweak for filler.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game.
Summer says quite a few people Grumps is moving today.
Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says keeps him busy summer roll.
Grump says quoting Bible verses in profile and posting naughty words in chat is certainly a choice done there.
Summer says at Gaga and Grumpsy Law.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says Saint in the house thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says doo-doo for Gaga. Share the live chat for chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Grumps says it's summer, I wish I didn't have to.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Grumps says it's Sam
Benjamin is in the house.
Summer says at Grumpsy, but some people don't understand that spamming is annoying, and it makes the TTS delay.
Gaga Grumps says creative in the house thanks for doing your daily heart.
Blake says shark.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Summer says at Grumps, especially if it's a word that won't work.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grumps says it's summer. Grumps says next thing in Gonada is filter audio.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. T.
Blake says Teddy.
Summer says at Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says people think audio and ado are clever, but too many vowels to be a good starter lol. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Summer says okay, I give up, creative is here now. There's no way I'm gonna get at the top.
Gaga Grumps says haha summer.
Grumps says it's summer, grease them fingers.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with T please creative.
Summer says at Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says it's worse when Ryan's here.
A creative one says think.
Gaga Grumps says creative getting filtered. Gaga Grumps says thank you got. Gaga Grumps says saved by the K at number 5.
Says Blick.
A creative one says trick.
Gaga Grumps says hi there Mila.
Summer says pluck.
Summer says that ill creative one no tea. Gaga Grumps says Blick fits, but what is it?
A creative one says lol ... I just saw that.
Summer says wouldn't brick be better?
A creative one says click.
Gaga Grumps says it isn't valid lol.
Blake says flick.
Gaga Grumps says brick instead.
Summer says at Mila Irving there's no N.
Well, creative one says crick. Says croc.
Gaga Grumps says R moved into number 2 and C doesn't want to live next to K.
Well, creative one says croak.
Gaga Grumps says C doesn't live next to K.
Summer says frusk.
Summer says wait NVM. Gaga Grumps says no A for croak but crook works. Gaga Grumps says wait for it.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Grumps says it mean no English cool.
Explode 'em on her face, she's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with
Gaga
glee.
Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Summer says at James shut up.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet.
Grumps says that James you should have been one. Instead you posted it.
If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I am sad Holly hadn't you noticed. Lol. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Grumps says at Holly yet here you are. Let me help you find the door.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Welcome Faz to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. R.
Blake says roads.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Thanks for the follow. Race to the top, like a thorn.
Grumps says that Blake no plural in Wordle.
Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Everybody get down! It's a freaking sniper! Ha ha!
Gaga Grumps says Grumps with the snipe on Blake. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with R please Grumps.
Grumps says roadie.
Gaga Grumps says roadie you got.
Grumps says oh, come on.
Gaga Grumps says a green A moved into number 3 Wordle Street.
Grumps says it always underscore penny. Stop spamming.
Says Enact.
Gaga Grumps says you tried for a wipeout, didn't you lol?
Blake says tight to see if there's any letter in.
Gaga Grumps says an act not valid.
would be honored if you would join
Gaga
us.
Grumps says because it's an act.
Grumps says at Fabian no spamming.
Gaga Grumps says no plurals in Wordle. Gaga Grumps says stop Fabian, your word won't be used if it's plural.
Precious says hi Gaga.
Grumps says at Precious _ welcome back.
Says Shale.
Benjamin is in the house.
Precious says shake.
Gaga Grumps says Precious in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says shake works. Gaga Grumps says S moved into 1 and E into 5. Gaga Grumps says no D for spade.
Creative 1 says spade.
Grumps says I wanna say stir, why did we kill R&T?
Precious says suave.
The Creative 1 says no T.
Gaga Grumps says no C for space. Gaga Grumps says suave works.
Grumps says at TJ's greatest parade no H.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG's for Precious.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Will the fireworks
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
A random star chosen by fate. Play a part, it's a live date.
Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says he do the daily Wordle. I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Wordle with Gaga.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Get it in 3, it's do or die. Only in 3, a pretty sky.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Da da da. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Welcome
Gaga
Benson to
Grumps
Wordle
says
with
thanks
Gaga.
for the GG's precious. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. K. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned, like a thon. Fingers on fire.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says I wonder what word this will be. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with K, please Grumps.
Grumps says kiosk.
Gaga Grumps says okay, I was wrong lol.
Grumps says ha. Grumps says watch it be catch.
Pressure says prime.
Gaga Grumps says still no wipeout for you, a yellow eye in need of a home. Gaga Grumps says prime fix.
LL Creative 1 says slime.
Pressure says druid.
Gaga Grumps says R moved into number 2, I still homeless. Gaga Grumps says no E for dried. Gaga Grumps says druid tests for fruits.
Well, Creative 1 says 4.
Precious says brain.
Gaga Grumps says I lives at number 4.
Precious says grain.
Precious says train.
Creative 1 says train.
Gaga Grumps says trail cause I want to see if there's AT lol. Gaga Grumps says catch wouldn't have been a wipeout either lol.
Welcome, Gremlin, to the game grotto.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Welcome in, guys. Settle down. Grab your heart.
Miles says hey again.
Share us round. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat. Grab your daily heart. Claim your points and prepare to play.
Grumps says at mild higher.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Game Gremlins coming, let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Game Gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says are we going to get through a whole session without a wipeout?
Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Q without a tail, I mean O.
Grumps says Squinton is AQ.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
hearts be flying like a thorn. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Benjamin is in the house.
My alt says yes, let's do Omega. Gaga Grumps says my alt in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with O please Grumps.
Grumps says olive.
Gaga Grumps says olive you got. Gaga Grumps says E lives at number 5 Wordle Street and I needs a home.
Lech says Netch.
Gaga Grumps says nice entrance Luch niche fits.
Grumps says niche works.
Gaga
We would
Grumps
be
says we
honored
added a homeless
if
egg.
you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says indie works.
A creative one says indie.
Giolin one says hi.
Grumps says at Giolin 1 welcome back.
Good game.
Grumps says at Billy Bob Jack.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's on the
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy. As in her face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Giolin in the house. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Well, Creative One says hi Ryan.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. N. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon, gremlin renowned, like-a-thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with N, please, not Tracy's daddy. Gaga Grumps says just change your name on me, why don't you, Ryan? Gaga Grumps says Nacho fits. Gaga Grumps says A moved into number 2 Wordle Street.
If you would join us.
Jellum 1 says wrench. Chase says Nacho average game.
Thanks for the
Gaga Grumps says can't be ranch.
Grumps says holy dad joke.
Benjamin is in the house.
Billy Bob JR says Katie maybe.
Gaga Grumps says shy in the house thanks for doing your daily heart.
Jellin1 says Gantz.
Gaga Grumps says Gamer Fits.
Grumps says at Jellin1 no plurals in Wordle.
Gaga Grumps says Yellow M in need of a home.
Billy Borba says Mats.
Grumps says at Ellie hand with index finger and thumb cross no plural.
Gaga Grumps says oh would they be so cruel to do madam, or course they would.
Grumps says at higher.
Gaga Grumps says thought we had it then.
Billy Borba says Madry.
Billy Bobber says madly.
Grumps says oops.
Creative1 says madly.
Gaga Grumps says they add up quick don't they Maddie? Thanks for them.
Che says premature fireworks.
Gaga Grumps says
Good
truly
game.
madly deeply FTW.
Grumps says got too excited.
Gaga Grumps says haha madly it was.
Billy Bob JR says yip 2 in a row.
Gaga is in the box. Don't let her lose.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Don't let him push yours. Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly. Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says yay Billy well done. GG's for Billy Boy.
Gremlins, let's go. Gremlins, let's go. Team Gaga, Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Gremlins, let's go.
Gaga Grumps says dooba for Gaga. Share the live, chat the chat and shower her with roses and GG's.
Gremlins, let's go.
Well, Creative1 says could have been a sentence if the A at the top was an I.
Gremlins, let's go.
Gaga Grumps says ha I could construct one from it. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says I just had an audacious thought. Taking all the words from the live and making a song out of them LMAO.
Chase says I don't need any more wigs for my 3 a.m. insomnia.
Gaga Grumps says is that your way of saying you want a level up song shy?
Chase says, I didn't level up, I just attended 100 days.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Welcome Ashley Hoyles to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says oh looky looky.
Chase says FF so close.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Q. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin written out.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts beat flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Chase says quest.
A creative one says Che.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Q please shy.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Dan in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart.
Grumps says at R055 and yet you are here. Sad, are you not? Che says at Ill Creative 1 hello.
Gaga Grumps says quest you got.
Big Doib Levitate Agency CEO says thought I would quickly fly in before dinner has seen you live.
Che says at Notre Daddy destroy your fingertips, feel the burn.
Chase says I am back, baby.
No letters to shout. Wipe out.
Gaga Grumps says she delivers the first wipeout of the day.
The grid can figure it out.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Grumps says at Big Doib Levitate Agency CEO, look who's out of bed already.
EUANNO1 says happy.
Yuano1 says happy.
Chase says at Big Doib Levitate Agency CEO.
Gaga Grumps says finally. LL Creative 1 says bravo. Gaga Grumps says bravo fits.
Notress Daddy says roach.
Gaga Grumps says I moved into number 3R and O are homeless.
Yuano1 says orange.
Gaga Grumps says roach works.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says wipeout to fireworks.
Explode 'em on her face. She's in a happy place. Fireworks for
Notress Daddy says hell yet. Daddy's back.
so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga.
Chase says a wipeout and fireworks.
Grumps says TT's on coping says, we're being naughty.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the last grid of the day.
Notress Daddy says next letter is W.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Notress Daddy says are for Ryan.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. R. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts beat flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with R, please, Ryan.
Notris Daddy says slacking Che.
Notress Daddy says right.
Gaga Grumps says right you got.
Jay says at Notress Daddy other half texted me.
Notris Daddy says at Che Long.
No letters to shine.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Notress Daddy says major.
Jay says, and when the men offer food, you reply.
Notris Daddy says pain wipeout.
Chase says coming for my wipeout title too.
Notris Daddy says wimpy.
Notris Daddy says law. O Creative 1 says place.
Gaga Grumps says boxed fits. Gaga Grumps says yellow O and E in need of homes. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless C. Gaga Grumps says no fireworks for Ryan lol. Gaga Grumps says cello is a good shout. LL Creative 1 says filler time. Gaga Grumps says C moved into number 1. And we added a homeless L.
L Creative 1 says close.
Gaga Grumps says 2 options 2 guesses. Gaga Grumps says close for first guess. Gaga Grumps says there is clove as well. Gaga Grumps says and wouldn't you know it.
Jay says I told you to pick the one you wouldn't choose.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says I did. I would have gone clove lol. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Jay says, well, also don't listen to me.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for joining me to play Wordle. I will be back at 4 PM UK tomorrow for more Wordle with Gaga.
Jay says I'm a wipeout champ.
LL Creative wants us floating up in your head. Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Grumps says good night, good day one and all.
Well, Creative 1 says bye.
Grumps says it's all Creative 1 too perfect.
Not Tracy's daddy says love all never goodbye. Gaga Grumps says even if they scammed me today on TGHE Daily